Hello, everyone, and welcome in. We are so excited that you have joined us today. We have an awesome demo in store for you. So just going to give everybody a few minutes to get situated and enter into the meeting. This is a great time to grab some water, coffee, whatever you're feeling on this Thursday, and we will get started in about 2 minutes. Thanks for your patience. If you're just now joining, thank you. Just going to give everybody 1 more minute to enter into the meeting and then we will get going. Thanks. All right, looks like we are good to go. Again, thank you so much for joining. We're really happy that you are here. And at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Chris.
Thank you, Madison. Hello, everybody. My name is Chris Carrion, and welcome to this week's weekly demo. Today's demo is titled Introduction to Jupyter Notebooks. So I will go over some things, and I hope you enjoy it. Just to give you a quick glimpse of the agenda here, we're going to be talking a little bit about Jupyter Notebooks, but first of all, a little bit about me, an introduction to what Jupyter Notebook, what's the application, and why use it. I'm going to give you some pointers on how to get started and really kind of illustrate how you can use Jupyter Notebooks in the context of security control validation. And then I'm going to jump into the platform itself and show you how you can leverage the Jupyter Notebook application to do all sorts of neat things, play with data, come up with graphs, really sort of use the power of Jupyter Notebooks to come up with your own reporting, your own dashboards, and really leverage the data. So a little bit about me. I'm a sales engineer here at AttackIQ, or solution engineer, either or. I've been with AttackIQ for about a year. My experience has been, mostly on cybersecurity and IT. So I have around 18 years in the commercial and DoD space. I come from a threat intelligence background. I've worked in the SOC floor as an incident responder, and also as customer success. And now, obviously, I'm a solutions engineer here at AttackIQ. Previous military, and then, sort of my favorite MITRE technique is T1003. So let's talk a bit about Jupyter Notebook, right? If you don't know what it is an application that was developed as a web-based interface for the popular Python programming language to essentially build notebooks, right, or documents. This application, right, there's 3 iterations that you could see here. There was the original called the Jupyter Notebook, and then there's a newer one called JupyterLab. Now, JupyterLab is a sort of newer, more powerful and versatile interface for essentially working with notebooks. Again, notebooks are essentially documents that have code in them, and we'll deep dive a little bit on what those are. But JupyterLab provides you a more integrated and extensible interface for developing and running code that allows you to work with multiple notebooks at the same time and terminals. So if you really want to collaborate as far as creating these notebooks and running code, JupyterLab is a better option than Jupyter Notebook, the original Jupyter Notebook, right? Obviously, it has a more modern and customizable user interface, and you can use things like drag and drop. You can customize your layouts, do things like split views, and have more advanced code editing tools. The last part is the last aspect of Jupyter Notebooks is the Jupyter Hub. Now, Jupyter Hub is a multi-user server version of JupyterLab. It allows teams to run their own instances of the application. And that's what we did with AttackIQ, right? We were running our own instance of JupyterLab and the platform itself so you can leverage the data. So Jupyter Hub is inherently designed to be used as a shared resource, right? In organizations where there's many users that need to have access to the application and the documents at the same time. So it really facilitates sharing and collaboration. Now, why use Jupyter Notebook, right? So you won't be surprised to hear that Jupyter Notebook is now a major part of data science workflows at many organizations across the globe. So if your goal is to work with data, using notebooks may speed up your analysis and data gathering and make it easy to communicate and share your work. Jupyter Notebooks are particularly useful for exploratory data analysis, where as an analyst you can develop and refine code, uh, generate visualizations based on the data, and even test hypotheses. And best of all, as part of the open source Jupyter project Jupyter, Jupyter Notebook is completely free, right? You can download the software on its own or as part of a data science toolkit. So although it is possible to use different programming languages, right, most people focus on Python. And when we get to the demo piece, that's what we're gonna focus on. So how do you get started, right? So how do you start leveraging Jupyter Notebooks? So luckily, you have a few options here available for you. Jupyter Notebook is available as an online or cloud-based version. You don't really need to install anything on your local machine. There are several ways to access Jupyter Notebook, right? And much of the same it has the same capabilities as a local installation, for example. So obviously, we're going to use the AttackIQ platform in this occasion. AttackIQ provides users with an integrated Jupyter Hub instance, like I said before, right within the platform management console. So it contains all the necessary notebooks already, templates that we're going to use through the remainder of this demo, right? Another option for you, if you didn't want to use Jupyter Notebooks in the AttackIQ platform again, you can use Jupyter Notebooks in and Google Colab and CoCalc. So, with both of these vendors or resources, they provide you with a cloud-based instance of Jupyter Notebook where you can essentially create any notebooks without installing anything. So it's the good thing again is it's free to sign up, and so you can try it out. For regular offline use though, you may want to consider installing Jupyter Notebook or the JupyterLab environment directly on your system, right? So for this approach, I recommend checking out some of the many popular or free distributions that you can download, or if you're good with command line, command lines and terminals, you can use the pip command, right, to install locally. And also, if you have any questions for specific or any updated installation instructions, I really suggest you visit and refer to the distribution's website, or even visit the Project Jupyter's website for how to install it locally. All right, so let's talk a bit about the JupyterLab interface. This is where you'll spend most of your time, right? So the interface is really quite simple, and we'll dive into the actual interface once we get to the demo part. But there are a few key sections here that you should consider when you're managing or running notebooks, right? So the main parts of the Jupyter Notebook interface include the menu bar you can see here at the top. The menu bar contains options to create, save, open, and essentially manipulate Jupyter Notebooks. The left sidebar contains several commonly used tabs, including a file browser, right? So if you have multiple notebooks or documents, you can reference those there. You have a list of open tabs, so you can toggle back and forth. A list of kernels and terminals. So again, if you're running a notebook on Python, you'll see the Python kernel there. You also have a table of documents, sorry, a table of contents for your working documents, and also a third-party extension manager that allows you to extend the application's capabilities. There's a lot of them that are offered for free, so it really allows you to explore that. On the right sidebar, you'll essentially see a metadata viewer and debugger. The notebook area at the center is where you actually write and design code. You can create text, images, and other types of content in separate cells. The toolbar right above that, contains a couple icons that essentially allow you to perform some, common operations like running the code or creating new cells and even saving the notebook. So similar to the menu bar. Inside the notebook, you'll reference a lot. You'll hear the terms code cells. Essentially, these are blocks where you write the code and you execute the code. But you could also use markdowns and comments to essentially, let people know what the code cells are, what they mean. You could also add headings, images, and links. And then finally, the context menu, which you won't see here, but essentially you can access that by right-clicking on any of the above areas that I mentioned. So if you click or right-click on the file browser, you can essentially manage any downloads of files that you created. Or if you click on the notebook area, you can also edit the code cells. So by now, you're probably thinking, okay, so how can I leverage Jupyter Notebooks in my own cybersecurity program, right? So the good news here is that you can already use the power of Jupyter Notebooks to illustrate, for example, how do I get data on automated security validation, which is going to be the focus of this demonstration. So, just a quick note here, as a matter of fact, AttackIQ has worked with a lot of security teams out there to develop reporting templates and analytical capabilities using the AttackIQ platform and Jupyter Notebooks to essentially analyze, visualize, report, study, etc., your security program performance. So a clear example of that would be you can use AttackIQ's open APIs with Jupyter Notebooks to automate, for example, emulation-related tasks and generate some graphs, reports, and charts that will help operation teams. It will inform the board of directors or C-suite executives or even regulators to help make better decisions about the governance of your security program. However, I got to say that you can apply this concept with your own existing data sets and your current tools. So Jupyter Notebook is agnostic, right? So it can adapt to a wide range of use cases. We're just using the AttackIQ platform because that's what we have integrated Jupyter Notebooks in. So let's talk a little bit about how you can use some of these notebooks to, for example, communicate the state of your security posture, or even things like identify areas of improvement within your program. So first thing, right, before we dive into that aspect is knowing your audience is extremely important, right? When creating products or analyzing data or creating reports, because it ensures that those products that you create in Jupyter Notebooks, it ensures that it communicates the relevant information effectively and efficiently, it helps resonate with your consumer of that information, right? Whether that be a technical team, managers, executives, etc. It also helps you to resonate with that customer when they receive that information, and it helps address any kind of specific concerns and priorities. So, all in all, by tailoring your report stories and visuals to the correct audience, teams can essentially help drive real security improvements in an organization while essentially building trust and credibility with your internal stakeholders. Generally, the aim here is to elicit a desired response based on the products that we present or that you present. So things like a commitment for resources from your audiences, right? Um, and let's categorize these audiences, right? They mainly fall within three main categories or tiers. And the first one is the executive leadership and stakeholders, or what I like to call them tier one audiences. Essentially here, effective reporting should provide evidence to them, to C-level executives, board of directors, regulators, etc., of the current security risk and posture from automated security control validation data. Now, you can use Jupyter Notebooks in this case to create reports that depict high-level metrics, for example, on the performance of the controls that you are testing. So things like analyzing monthly, quarterly, or even yearly to really identify and drive, for example, security and risk policy for the organization as a whole. An example of these metrics, as you can see here on the screenshot, is you can provide monthly security policy assessment results from your BAS scenarios, your breach and attack simulation workflows. To an example would be, hey, our firewall, what has the team identified as being a wide and unacceptable gaps and prevention of scenarios, for example. So coming up with a report, which I will show you here shortly, can help you discuss in a meeting with executive leadership to drive things like, hey, I want to create a security control policy audit, or even have change review boards, right? Because as things change in the environment, you want to be able to review those changes and make sure they're tracked and make sure they don't present any unnecessary risk. You could use these types of reports for these audiences to automate and enhance security tool vendor evaluations, for example. So if you're testing or drag racing different products with breach and attack simulation assessments, maybe that's something that you can present to them to recommend options for their acquisition of tools. You could also help other external groups like automating IT security management processes, right? It's not really um, confined to cybersecurity, but you can also use these types of notebooks or tools to help other teams like the IT folks. And obviously, you want to be able to gain support in budget or prioritization for your security and risk projects, right? So again, if you're trying to improve the security of your program, presenting these types of reports to the executives will help you drive those changes. Another type of audience is the technical management, right? So that's a level below the tier one. I like to call them tier two audiences. Now, technical management and security operation team leads can also benefit from these types of reporting, and they are obviously more granular, and they provide more granular insights regarding what controls are exercised, for example, what assessments are being executed on your environments, on your controls. And so Jupyter Notebooks can help managers assess the performance of deployed technologies, for example, to test the efficacy of security controls, processes, and teams in terms of detection, response, and prevention coverage against a set of advanced persistent threats, for example, or malware emulations. These types of reports that are geared toward tier two audiences can also help communicate if the foundation functional requirements, for example, or security baselines are met, and also provide strategic decision support for, let's say, rationalization for the organization's security architecture, right? So it can help drive the path as far as security architecture, right? How are we going to architect our security? Essentially, you have, with these types of reports, you can have a say in that. So an example of this will be, let me just give you an example. If a technology failed to prevent an important test, right? If you're running emulations, and that technology failed to prevent that emulation, now that's going to help you, sort of engage with the vendor to improve that product, right? Or it could also help you, help prioritize architectural projects, right, resulting from the identified gaps, if they can't be resolved, right? So if we see a gap in our security based on the test that we do, and we're able to illustrate that with these types of tier 2 reportings, it could also, again, drive architectural plans there. The third, another type of audience to consider here are technical operations, and folks like blue teams, red teams, purple teams, or as I call them, tier 3 audiences. Now, blue and red teams very much rely on technical information to design, execute, and interpret validation findings, right? So data points that might be important to their processes, include things like what tactics were used, or techniques, or even sub-techniques that were tested in the environment. What were the security technology prevention and detection details, and sort of the sequence of events, right? When we conducted these attacks, how do those fall into place? So Jupyter Notebooks really supports red, blue security operation teams within the organization, by allowing them to analyze and study security control behaviors resulting from emulations or exercises that are more atomic, right, more detailed, even down to the TTP level of testing. So Jupyter Notebooks can essentially give additional context to purple teamings as well. For if they don't have a purple team, right, it can help in that initiative. So resulting from the shared feedback and the findings to mitigate, identify security gaps, right? So you found the gaps, you have the technical information to give to your technical teams to go down and close those gaps. So now that, for example, you have identified your audiences, and the reports can be quickly generated to communicate a variety of security control validation use cases. In this demo, you can assume that some security teams may have already conducted some threat assessments, kind of aligned with threat-informed defense. And so, I'll show you an example of what that looks like in the product. So use cases here that you may focus on would be things like adversary campaign emulations, right? So how can I report on adversary campaign emulations using Jupyter Notebooks? How do I present information or findings in a report that deal with endpoint control policy validation, network control policy validation? Maybe we could also do things like security control comparisons. So, comparing two security technologies or policies, and even kind of show you more technical atomic scenario results, right? So let's take a closer look at how that is done before we jump into the platform. And finally, before we jump into the platform, just know that we're going to be using the AttackIQ Cloud, right? So this again has the Jupyter Notebooks, or I should say Jupyter Hub, integrated in the platform, so you can leverage all the data that's already there. And then this is based on agent activity, right? So if we're running emulations and really trying to test your security stack, we're going to be able to validate the prevention And by using things like the integration manager, which is going to query your SIEM and or your security tools, we're also going to bring in data that deals with detection, right? So you're going to have not only prevention details, but also detection details from your security stack. With that being said, I'm going to go ahead and jump into the platform. So let me share that screen. All right. All right. So right here, I'm actually in the AttackIQ platform. So what I'm going to do is navigate to the main menu, and I'm going to go ahead and click Jupyter Notebooks. Now, a few things here that you're going to see is that we're going to enable the hub, right? So normally this service is stopped, but we can initialize it so you have access to it. And while that's being initialized, I want to go over some of the templates that are already available in the platform. So as I was saying before, is you have access to the these templates that deal with adversary campaign emulations, right? You have access to different target audiences within adversary campaign emulation results, right? So if we wanted to target our board of directors or C-level executives, maybe this is something I want to use. But if I wanted to share my reports with more technical folks, you could also leverage this this template right here, right? So as I scroll down here, you can see we also have Jupyter Notebook templates that already have the code already laid out. So if I wanted to share results for, let's say, endpoint control policy validation, right? I can share those results with, again, our different audiences, which include executives and the board directors, technical management, and technical operations. Same thing with network control policy validation is that I'm able to leverage the data that's already in AttackIQ using the AttackIQ APIs and Jupyter Notebooks to extract the data, manipulate it, and then create reports out of them. So I will also mention that the data, again, is not only limited to AttackIQ data. You can bring in external data and fuse that information into your reports. That way you can, if you wanted to weigh certain maybe techniques because they directly impact your environment, you could do all sorts of things with Jupyter Notebooks. Really, there's no limitations, but again, we're using AttackIQ data and Jupyter Notebooks to demonstrate the flexibility and the power of Jupyter Notebooks. So again, showcasing network control policy validation findings and outcomes for different audiences. Again, I talked about security control comparisons, right? So comparing two different technologies. So if you're thinking about, one EDR or two EDRs or three EDRs that you want to compare performance, this would be a use case that would be relevant for that. We have other kind of miscellaneous use cases as well. So if you wanted to see, for example, hey, I just want to see what type of scenarios I ran in my environment against my controls, then you can readily generate these types of reports that display, the tactics that were emulated, the scenarios that were executed in your environment to really show you, what happened and when it happened. So under the miscellaneous use cases, it is not really limited to security control validation. You could also say, hey, show me things like, how many platform users I have registered in my AttackIQ console, or just show me a summary of controls that have been tested, right? So really, it's all about how you pick the data, right? So as I scroll up here, again, you'll see that the AttackIQ Jupyter Notebook Hub is active and running. So I can go to the hub, or in this case, I'm just going to go ahead and show you what one of these notebooks look like. So we can talk about, again, the interface here and what you should expect. As I scroll down here, I'm going to go ahead and choose the miscellaneous use case. So let's go ahead and take a look at the view assessment atomic scenario results. So I'm going to go ahead and click View Jupyter Notebook. Once I click on that button, it's going to take me to the Jupyter Notebook itself, the document that has the code already laid out. And as I was saying at the beginning of the demonstration, is these are the actual documents that you get to edit and run, right? So you can add things like markdowns, titles, notes to explain, for example, what the intent of your notebook is. In this case, you see here below the title is, this Jupyter Notebook is intended for a certain audience. It's gonna summarize threat coverage based on the scenarios that we emulated, right? All scenarios are grouped by MITRE ATT&CK tactics. So this is something that AttackIQ does naturally. So once we have the data, you can sort that information, parse it, and generate it. You also note that a lot of these Jupyter Notebook templates that we have available in the platform directly align with blueprints. And if you don't know what blueprints are essentially guidelines of how to start doing security control validation at scale. And think about that crawl, walk, run phase, right? We start out with doing basic validation, and then we improve towards a level of essentially security control optimization, right? We're not just validating, we're actually optimizing our configurations for better protection. Here's some kind of sort of capabilities and limitations of this notebook, and sort of a quick, down and dirty of how do you run this notebook. Here below, you also see sort of a screenshot of the expected output. Again, we're gonna execute assessments, and then we're gonna gather that data in the Jupyter Notebooks to show you exactly what scenarios were executed. Again, it's gonna be grouped by MITRE ATT&CK tactic. So this notebook is actually gonna generate 2 tabs within an Excel file. The first tab is going to show you the MITRE ATT&CK tactics. The second tab is sort of a more progress summary of prevention and detection results by month, right? Which you can configure once we get to the code cell block here shortly. Good thing is that you should always have some sort of guidance on how to interpret the report. So for each of these Jupyter Notebooks, we do include a report interpretation. Just exactly, very simple. Red means it wasn't prevented. Green means it was prevented. The gray means it wasn't tested, or the data is not available, right? So this is sort of the beginning of the notebook. As we scroll down, you'll see these input blocks, these code blocks. Essentially, here what you're seeing is a way that you can plug these values and then point the Jupyter Notebooks towards that. So for example, I have the platform URL that's going to be targeted. I have a temporary API token here, and then I have the reporting months values, right? So I'm going to leave this at 12. And then the final thing is that you need to add, according to the instructions here, is all we need to add is the assessment name, right? Which here you could see blank, but I know the assessment that I already run previously that has that data, and the assessment name here is 7 deadly techniques, right? So if you don't know about this assessment, it was a study done by AttackIQ that sort of said, these techniques are the ones that are not really protected against. So I'm gonna go ahead and test them right now. That's all you need to do, right, for the inputs piece. Yeah, you have other code blocks that is gonna essentially do API calls to the AttackIQ platform. And then obviously we have code here. I must emphasize, this is not a programming demo, right? I'm not gonna teach you Python here, but just know that these blocks represent different actions within the notebook. So we have the input data, we have the code extraction where we're going to gather, query the data from our API endpoints. We're going to go ahead and transform that data, extract that data, and then finally we're going to output that data into whatever format you got, right? So for these notebooks, they all look a little bit different, but the point here is that we're going to present a few files in Excel format, Excel worksheets. They're going to illustrate exactly what we intended, which was to show me atomic level results for the scenarios that we executed. So as I scroll down, it's just here more code. It's going to work on the visualization since we are incorporating graphs. This is sort of the code that's going to take care of that, right? Finally, it's going to sort of give us the ability to download this file. So all we did for this notebook in particular is, again, I'm going to go back to the top. We had the platform URL, which is here on the top. We have our temporary account token that you can generate from your own account if you do have Jupyter, if you do have access to AttackIQ, the dashboard, you have access to the AttackIQ platform. And then you have the assessment name that we executed previously, right? So we have to have that data in order to generate those reports. So once we have that, all we have to do is go to the menu, right? Click on cell, and then simply click run all. So when we click run all, it's going to execute all the phases, all the code blocks, all from the top to the bottom, and it's going to take a little bit of time. But while that's going, I want to go back to our Jupyter Notebooks and go to my Jupyter Hub, right? This is sort of what you're going to see once you get to your Jupyter Hub to manage all your notebook files, for example, download the files that you generated. As you can see here is we have an example of the 7 deadly techniques assessment that we ran previously, and then we went ahead and executed that Jupyter notebook. So I kind of want to show you what that data looks like once it's generated, so you could get a better sense of what you should report on. This notebook in particular is, again, geared towards middle management. So just be cognizant of the data that's contained in these reports. So you don't want to really present this to, regulators, board of directors. This is more geared towards analysts and technical management. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and right-click on this file. Again, this is the context menu, as I spoke about earlier in this presentation, and I'm going to go ahead and download that. Right. So while that's being downloaded, I'm going to go ahead and access it through my download folder, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. All right. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and again share my screen to show you that Excel file. So what you're seeing right here is what it was generated, right? So the first tab is a graphical representation of the scenarios that were executed, grouped by MITRE attack tactics. So you could see execution, persistence, defense evasion, credential access, and command and control. So right here at the top, it's going to tell us exactly the prevention status, right? So we were not able to prevent a lot of the results. So if I wanted to get further details on that, you'll find that on the second tab, right, where we tested, for example, bits job scripts, the obfuscation, other types of scripting that fall within the specific tactics. Now, we also mentioned the tactic descriptions here, so the T codes for the MITRE attack, and so kind of some context on how an adversary would use that. So I wanted to show you this kind of quick example that you can use your Jupyter Notebooks on to really sort of gather the data, create an output that you could present to your teams. That pretty much sums up the presentation, the demonstration that I have for you today. I hope it was helpful, and I'll see if you have any questions. If not, I'll pass the mic back to Madison.
Awesome. Thank you, Chris. And thank you everyone for joining. If you have any more questions, you can always reach out to us at AttackIQ. Please also check out our academy, AttackIQ Academy, which is free and has some really great resources there where you can also learn more about Jupyter Notebooks and take some courses. Um, Thank you so much, everyone, and we hope to see you for our next weekly demo. Have a great day.